Good morning, all of you. Welcome back to the online sessions on MWT. In the previous session, we have discussed about the magnetron as an oscillator. Okay, so this magnetron basically comes under the cross-field tubes called as M-type tubes. We have other tubes known as O-type tubes, are known as the linear beam tubes. And we discussed in the linear beam tubes as various tubes such as klystron tube we discussed, where we discussed about two cavity klystron and a reflex klystron oscillator. And more than two cavities, if you go on increase the number of cavities, what will happen now? The amplitude of the signal is simply going to get increased because of the multi-cavity klystron amplifier. As you go on increase the number of cavities in multi-cavity, we will be getting the more number of we will be getting the more amount of amplitude amplification. Okay, so we get a more amplifier action. That means the amplitude of the input signal is simply going to increase based on the number of cavities. If you increase the cavities, we get a more amount of amplification. So that is what basically the multi-cavity klystron amplifier is normally going to be. So that means here we discussed about all these various oscillators. Now in today's session, we'll try to discuss TWT, that is called a traveling wave tube, which comes under the slow wave structure and which is normally formed by using a helix. Okay, we have helix in the syllabus. So we discuss this helix TWT type of the tube. So before we go for that, there are some concepts underlying this particular magnetron. Let us try to discuss those small concepts before we move on to the traveling wave tubes, which comes under the linear beam type of the tubes. So we discussed about the basic construction of the what is this magnetron. So this is the top view of a magnetron, which you can see, right? So you're going to have the external peripheral. Okay, this is the external peripheral, which is like a cylindrical in shape, which is known as a cylindrical magnetron. And the cylindrical magnetron is normally going to have the anode cavities. So all these are the cavities. So cavity means what? An empty space is known as a cavity. So we're going to have, say, cavities here. So this is a 8 cavity magnetron has been shown over here. So here this is anode cavities. All these are connected with a positive polarity. Therefore we call it as an anode. So it's going to be called as an anode polarity. Anode is positive polarity. Cathode is always going to be a negative polarity. So this particular circle, this is a rod now we're going to have. So this particular is nothing but a conductor, which is normally going to supply the electrons, DC electrons. This is going to supply, this cathode is going to supply the DC electrons from the electron gun. And from one of the cavities, we normally going to take the output. And the space between the cathode and the anode is simply known as the interaction space. This space is known as the interaction space of the, it is interaction space for what? Interaction space for the DC electrons and the RF signal, DC electron and the RF signal, which is getting generated. So that is what basically the constructional feature of the magnetron. Okay. Now we discussed about the operation by three paths. See here, this is going to be a magnetron, another magnetron, same magnetron has been shown something like this, where this is nothing but a copper anode block. This is going to be the output coupling loop, and all these are known as resonant cavities. And this is an oxide coated cathode basically. And you're normally going to have a LEDs here to the cathode and heater circuit. And this is what the diagram which we show to explain the operation of the magnetron in terms of generating the RF waveform, in terms of generating the RF waveform at microwave frequency ranges. So this is what the magnetron which we discussed in the last class. So what this is normally speak about, when there is no magnetic field, when B is equal to 0, the electrons emerging out from the cathode will travel in a straight line path along this A path, and it is normally going to touch the cathode, and these electrons will not return back to the cathode. So therefore these electrons are of no use for us as far as the waveform is concerned. Then next, if we increase the magnetic field which is applied perpendicular to the perpendicular to the plane of this particular cathode rays, then the electron beam is going to experience some force. Because of this force, angular displacement is going to get taken place by the electron beam, and it is normally going to take a curvilinear path, and it is also going to hit the anode, and this electron b is also not going to return back. So this is the electron path which is going to be slightly, when we apply slightly more magnetic field, then b is equal to 0. So this is for capital B greater than 0, that is a magnetic field. If it is greater than 0 little bit, then we normally going to have the curvilinear path. Then we increase this to an extent, to some an extent, this is normally going to take this path like this continuously. The electron beam will be moving, and at some point it will be reaching to the cathode. Okay, and at some point it will be reaching to the cathode. And if we increase still little bit, now this particular electron beam is going to graze this particular anode. Okay, the electron beam, say ABC E path, let us say E path E, if I take path E, is going to graze the anode and comes back to the cathode. So this particular grazing magnetic field is nothing but the critical magnetic field, and it is known as the cutoff voltage for us. Now if we apply a voltage which is much more than the cutoff voltage or the cutoff magnetic field, then what we're going to have, these electrons are simply reaching to the cathode just immediately after some time without going nearer to the anode. So what is the thing which we have to have is, we are going to collect the output from one of the cathode end. Output coupling loop is there, which is connected to one of the cathode. So these electrons should compulsorily touch the anode so that we can collect the RF output signal. Now, if it is not at all reaching the anode, if this path D, the electron beam showing path D is not at all reaching the anode. So since it is not reaching the anode, we won't collect any RF signal at the output. So that means it is not generating any output from the output terminals. So that means compulsorily the path of the electron beam should be such that it will be going nearer, it will be compulsorily going nearer to the anode, much nearer to the anode. So therefore, how much voltage that you have to apply compulsory, how much magnetic field you have to apply here? The magnetic field that you have to apply is going to be nearer to the critical magnetic field. So it should not be too high than the critical magnetic field. It should not be too low than the critical magnetic field. So under that particular condition, it is normally going to generate the oscillations. Why? Because we can able to pick those oscillations from the anode terminal. So that is what the basic concept which we are going to have. So all these various parts are explaining about the movement of the electron beam under the influence of the magnetic field. When there is no magnetic field, electron beam is moving straight. When there is a little bit magnetic field, electron beam is taking curvilinear path. When the magnetic field is somewhat increased, then the electron beam is simply going to get traversed in the interaction space by taking various curves. When the magnetic field is little bit somewhat more than this, the electron beams are going to graze this particular anode and comes back to the cathode. Okay, and if the electron and the magnetic field is really too high than this particular critical magnetic field, then what will happen? These electrons D, okay, the electrons shown in this path D will simply return back to the cathode immediately, which is of no use for the design engineer. Okay, so this is what basically we have seen in the last class about the operation of the magnetron. Now overall, what is the favorable condition? That means, what is the meaning of favorable condition? The favorable condition is that where we normally going to get the output from the magnetron. If you don't get any output from the magnetron, that condition in the magnetron is not a favorable condition for us. So one fundamental condition for existence of oscillations in the resonance structure, when the magnetic field strength exceeds towards the cutoff magnetic field or cutoff point, there where there is an interaction between electrons and the electric field. So the electrons and the electric field are going to get interacted here. So because of that, we normally going to get some movement of electrons, electron beam in a curvilinear path in an oscillating manner. They will be reaching towards the anode so that we can pick the output from the anode. So thus we find a favorable condition causes oscillations to receive energy from the electrons in the interaction space. So that means the voltage, the magnetic field that we apply should be nearer, compulsorily should be very much nearer to the critical magnetic field. Then only we can able to produce the favorable oscillations. And one more important mode here is going to be pi mode oscillations. Now, what is the meaning of pi mode oscillation? See here, we are seeing a cavities here in the magnetron. All these are cavities. This is a cavity space. This is another cavity space. This is another cavity space. Like this, we have all these cavities. Okay. Now, these cavities will be separated apart by a angle, by a phase angle. Okay, of some 2 pi radii by some phase angle of theta. Okay, so now here, if the phase angle between the two such cavities is going to be multiples of these, the total if the multiples of pi, then it is going to be called as a pi mode oscillations. So that's what pi mode oscillations are normally going to be like. So that the cavity magnetron has 8 cavities by which it supports varieties of modes depending upon the phase difference between fields in the two cavities, between the two adjacent cavities. Now the adjacent cavities are going to have some phase difference because all the cavities are not going to have the same phase angle. The phase angle of the signal will be different between these two cavities. So therefore we normally going to get a phase difference between the fields in the two adjacent cavities. So boundary conditions are satisfied when the total phase shift around the 8 cavities is multiplied by 2 pi radians. So when the total phase shift around the all 8 cavities is simply multiples of 2 pi radians, then we normally going to get a favorable boundary conditions. However, the most important mode for magnetron operation is one where in the phase shift between the fields of adjacent cavities is pi radians. Now we are going to get the, when you are going to get the output by maintaining the phase difference between the two cavities as pi radians, then that type of mode is known as a pi mode, which is going to be the most favorable condition for operation of the magnetron in the practical applications. So we usually operate magnetron in the pi mode, and the magnetic field should be nearer to the critical field. So these two are the main conditions for producing the oscillations. Then there are three other concepts we have involved here called frequency pushing, frequency pulling, and obviously mode jumping. So frequency pushing depends on the voltage applied to the anode, positive voltage applied to the anode. So by changing the anode voltage, by changing the positive voltage applied to the anode, we are going to change the frequency. We are going to push the frequency. So that is what basically the anode voltage. The next, that's known as basically frequency pushing. What is frequency pulling? The load impedance, if the load impedance is changed, then it is normally going to result into frequency pulling. So two things are there now. If the anode voltage is changed, frequency pushing takes place. If the load impedance is going to get changed, frequency pulling is normally going to happen. So how it is normally going to be done? Similar to the reflex klystron, it is possible to change the resonant frequency of the magnetron by changing the anode voltage. In the reflex klystron also, we can change the resonant frequency. We can change the frequency of oscillations produced by the klystron by simply changing the repeller voltage. So by changing the repeller voltage, we can change the modes of operation of the klystron, because the mode is going to be n plus 3 by 4 mode into t is nothing but mode for us. So if you go on change these n values, then definitely the mode is going to change. If the mode is going to change, definitely the frequency is normally going to change for the reflex klystron oscillators. But once it is fixed to that, it will be like that only in the case of the reflection oscillator, obviously. Same is the case with the magnetron as well. Now here, similar to the klystron, reflex klystron, it is possible to change the reference frequency of magnetron by changing the anode voltage. So this process referred to as frequency pulling is due to the fact that the change in anode voltage results in change in the orbital velocity of the electrons. Obviously, if you increase the anode voltage, the orbital velocity of the electrons nearer to the anode is also going to change. So because of that particular thing, the frequency is also going to increase. So this alters this particular anode voltage is going to alter the rate at which the energy is transferred to the anode resonators and results in change of oscillations of the frequency. So that means here energy transfer is going to take place, right? So energy transfer is going to take place from anode, from the transferred to the anode, okay, from the interaction space. From interaction space, energy is transferred to the anode. We are picking the signal from the anode. So other one is going to, other concept is going to be called as a frequency pulling. So magnetron is also found the frequency variation due to changes in the load impedance. If the load that we apply to the magnetron is also, if it is going to get changed, then also the frequency of oscillations can be changed. This takes place regardless of whether these load variations are purely resistive or purely reactive. Reactive means what? It may be inductance effect, it may be capacitance effect, it may be both. Inductance and capacitance is called a reactive variations. So now here the frequency variations are going to be more strict for reactive variations. If the reactive components in the magnetron is changing, that means inductive property of the cavity if it is changing, and the capacitive property of the cavity if it is changing, then the frequency variation is also going to be more. So these frequency variations are known as a frequency pulling, caused by the load impedance variations reflected into the cavity resonators. Now here, once the frequency is adjusted, then the frequency has to be stabilized. We always want that from an oscillator. Once an oscillator is set up to generate certain frequencies, it has to generate signals at that same fixed frequencies. Therefore, to prevent frequency pushing, a stabilized power supply is normally employed. So the power supply which we apply to the magnetron after we set up, then the stabilized power supply has to be used to supply positive voltage to the anode. It is also prevented by using a circulator. Now one more problem, if even if we normally use this particular what is this stabilized power supply, still the frequency jumping is normally going to take place, or frequency changing is going to take place. To avoid that, we are going to use the circulator also, which does not allow backward flow of the electromagnetic energy. So what is circulator? Circulator is normally going to transmit signal in a sequential order. If you apply input to port 1, we get output from port 2. If you apply input to port 2, we get output from port 3. If you apply input to port 3, we get output from port 4. Like that, the immediate port only we get the output. Rest of the ports, we won't get any output signals. So by keeping that in view, what we can have is the reflected signals should not get generated. So the reflection should not get take place. To avoid reflection, we can use the what is this called as a circulators also to avoid this particular frequency pushing. So this circulator is placed before the waveguide connection at the output of the magnetron. So to the output, we normally going to connect the waveguide. So to the output of the waveguide, we connect to the circulator. Okay. So like that, we normally going to avoid this particular frequency pushing. The next concept is going to be mode jumping. Obviously, we are talking about mode jumping means what? The frequency of oscillations, if they are changing continuously because of mode change, then it's going to be called as a mode jumping. So the various modes differ very little in frequency from each other. Obviously, due to this, magnetron oscillations have a tendency to jump from one mode to the another mode. So due to variations in frequency, the modes are also going to jump from one mode to the another mode very quickly under slight variations in the operating conditions. So what are the operating conditions? Just now we spoke about the operating conditions. That is, the anode voltage is one of the operating condition. Load is going to be another operating condition. By changing these two, the mode is also going to change. If the mode changes, obviously the frequency of oscillations are also going to change. So this results in an abrupt change in the frequency of oscillations and the power output. So this is known as mode jumping. So this mode jumping is also going to be critical performance criteria for the operation of the magnetron. Now, what are the performance characteristics of a magnetron? So, for a pulsed mode, the magnetron can be used for very high power radiations. That is, 250 kilowatts of power can be radiated from the magnetron. And for UHF band, 10 milliwatts of power is normally going to be used. X band 2 milliwatts, and for 95 gigahertz, and it is normally used for frequency range of 95 gigahertz to 8 kilowatts. For 95 gigahertz signals to generate, it will be transmitting around 8 kilowatts of power. And frequency, it can be used for frequencies 500 megahertz to 12 gigahertz, and an efficiency is somewhat more than the efficiency of the reflex klystron. Reflex klystron efficiency is going to be 40 to 70%, whereas here it will be reaching from 40 to 70%. Duty cycle is 0.1%. Now, where we normally use this magnetron, we are using a microwave ovens. So in microwave ovens, we normally going to use the magnetron, that is called microwave oven. So this microwave oven is normally going to generate fixed frequencies. Therefore, microwave oven comes under the fixed frequency magnetrons. So therefore, they are normally used in the industrial, in industry as heating purpose, and in commercial use for a microwave ovens. And it can be used for voltage tunable magnetrons, are used in the sweep oscillators in the telemetry and missile applications. It is normally used in a radar as a transmitter. In the pulsed radar circuits, we normally use the magnetron to generate the pulses, to transmit the pulses from a radar to the targeted object. We normally use this particular microwave oscillators. So this is what the basics, extra things, underlying concepts which are there in the magnetron for us. Okay. So keep in mind, in the examination, compulsorily you have to draw the diagrams. What diagrams you have to draw compulsorily in the exam for magnetron? You have to draw this diagram, which is the constructional diagram, schematic diagram of a magnetron, top view, schematic diagram of a magnetron. This you have to draw compulsorily. And you have to explain the operation with the help of this kind of a diagram, and try to explain the favorable condition of oscillations. Then next one is, what is pi mode? Pi mode is nothing but if the phase difference between the two cavities is going to be pi radians, then it is going to be called as a pi mode. Then next one is frequency pushing, frequency pulling. Frequency pushing is because of the variation in the anode voltage. Frequency pulling is because of variation in the load changes. And mode jumping is what? Because of these operating conditions. Operating conditions बोले तो क्या है हम करो हमारा को? Operating conditions means the anode voltage and the load impedance. If they change, obviously mode jumping is also going to take place. So we have to compulsorily stabilize these two changes in order to avoid the mode jumping, obviously. So these are the various concepts involved in the magnetron for us. Now we move on to the traveling wave tube, which comes under the slow wave structure. Now traveling wave tube comes under the linear beam tubes, where the electric and magnetic fields are linear. Okay. So now let us look into the construction feature of this particular TWT tube, traveling wave tube. So in the input side, we normally going to have an electron gun as usual, like in a klystron tube. And inside that, you're going to have a heater element and a cathode. Cathode is going to emit the DC electrons, and these DC electrons which are emitted by the cathode will be moving randomly in a random directions. Now in order to guide them to flow into the actual TWT tube, we are putting the grids here. See here, grids here. We are going to put the grids. Then to accelerate these electrons, we are going to put the anode cavity here. So anode gap, it is not cavity, anode gap. So using this anode gap, all these electrons are simply guided to flow into the traveling wave tube, to flow into the traveling wave tube. Now after the anode, we are going to have the coaxial input cable using which we normally supply the RF signal. We normally supply the RF signal of low amplitude. And this RF signal is simply been transferred in this particular interaction space. Now the space between the coaxial input cable, coaxial output cable is known as the interaction space in the TWT tube. And linearly along this particular tube, we normally going to have the beam focusing magnets. We connect a beam focusing magnets like this. Okay, so these magnets are normally going to supply the magnetic field, right, which will be along the direction of the wave. That means parallel to the direction of the wave, we normally going to supply the magnetic field. So the electron beam will be traversed through this particular helix. Now here we normally going to take a copper wire and we wound the copper wire in a helix fashion. And the electron beams will be directed to flow into this particular helical tube. And output is collected from the another coaxial cable output. From here we're going to collect the output, and there should be some cooling fans connected at the output in order to cool the temperature, because the electrons are traveling at a very high velocity, so therefore they generate lot of heat. To absorb the heat, we normally going to have the cooling fans here, just like we put a heat sinks or cooling fans in the power amplifier to reduce the heat or to dissipate the heat very fastly, not to damage the system. We normally going to connect the cooling fans at the output. So this is what the basic construction feature. Apart from this, at the middle of this, we're going to have these two bars are these black balls. If you see black bars, these bars are for the attenuator. So by changing this movement, by moving this attenuator, we normally going to change the value of attenuation offered to the wave that we normally going to get from the output of this particular traveling wave magnetron. Okay, so traveling wave tubes are basically, now when we have a klystron tube, why we are going for the TWT tubes? The only one reason why we are going for TWT tubes is to process the broadband signals, whereas the klystron is normally used to process narrowband signals, whereas TWT is meant to process the broadband signals. Therefore, that is the reason why we are simply going into the TWT tubes. So TWT tubes are broadband devices in which there are no cavity resonators. There is no cavity business here in the case of the TWT tube. So entire space is the interaction space. The entire space is nothing but the interaction space. So therefore the interaction space extends and the electron beam exchanges energy with the RF wave over the full length of the tube. So many bunches are getting formed and the exchange of or transfer of energy takes place between electron beam to the RF to the electron beam. That process is simply continuous, and therefore it is simply going to increase the amplitude also, more than the amplitude which we get in the case of the klystron amplifiers. So, but it is necessary to ensure that the electron beam and RF wave both are traveling in the same direction. Now, this is what the important point here. Here, the electron beam is the beam which is coming due to the cathode. Okay, electron beam is the beam which is coming due to the cathode, and the RF wave. What is RF wave? RF wave is applied from the coaxial input. Are both traveling in the same direction with nearly same velocity. So the direction of travel for these two should be same. Along the axial length only they should travel. So like that we have to make the system arrangement. That is only the criticality which is going to be there in this particular TWT type of the tubes. So here the electron beam, see this is the electron beam which is coming here, bunch of electron beam, multiple electrons, many electrons are coming here, called as electron beam, travels with the velocity governed by the anode voltage, because anode is a positive potential. So this anode is going to simply attract all these electrons, and that means the electrons are governed by this particular anode to flow into a particular direction. So therefore the RF field propagates with a velocity equal to velocity of light. The interaction between the RF field and the electron beam will take place only when the RF field is retarded by slow wave structures like helix. So RF field is normally slowed down because of this slow wave structure. Because of slow wave structure, RF field is normally gets slowed down in comparison with the klystron tube. Therefore, we call it as a slow wave structure. So the wave, RF wave, is normally going to travel along this particular helix. Now this helix means what? So many turns are there. Since the number of turns, number of revolutions are increasing in the helix, obviously the number of rotations for the beam is simply increasing. Thereby, the speed of the RF signal is simply going to decrease. That is what which is going to happen here. So here, now what is the operation? Operation is pretty simple here. The applied RF voltage propagates along the turns of the helix. The RF signal which you are supplying at the input is, is actually going to propagate along the turns of the helix. So along the helix, it is traveling. So helix is something like a circular kind of a fashion. And it produces an electric field at the center of the helix. And it is going to produce electric field at the center of the helix. Like that, we have to make the arrangement. The electric field should be produced at the center of the helix because of the interaction of these two. So the axial electric field propagates with the velocity of light multiplied by the ratio of, now here, ratio of helix pitch to the helix circumference. Pitch to the circumference. We'll discuss about what is pitch, what is circumference in a while. So when the electrons enter the helix tube, the interaction takes place between the moving axial electric field and the moving electrons. So when the electrons enters into the helix tube, what happens? Interactions takes place between the electron beam and the moving electrons and the RF field. So the interaction between them is made in such a way that on an average, the electron beam delivers a transverse energy to the RF wave on the helix. So the electron beam energy should get transferred into helix. That means the RF voltage has to increase. RF voltage has to increase. How the RF voltage will increase? Or how the RF voltage frequency will change? If the high speed electrons which are coming from the electron gun are going to, if the energy of the electrons coming from cathode are going to get transferred into the RF energy, then the RF signal strength is going to increase. So that is how it's going to happen now. So that means here the energy of the RF signal should get changed in terms of amplitude or in terms of the phase. So this interaction causes the wave, signal wave grows in terms of amplitude and becomes larger. So because of this, the amplitude is normally going to become larger. Now, what type of modulation is normally taking place over here? Same as the klystron oscillator, velocity modulation. It works in the principle of the velocity modulation. Whenever you think about velocity modulation, compulsorily bunches should get formed. So if bunches are forming means what? We say bunches are forming because of the velocity modulation. So if it works with the principle of velocity modulation means, once again, bunches are getting formed in the TWT tube also. So when the axial field is zero, when the axial field is zero, electron velocity is unaffected. When the RF field is zero, for example, then the electron velocity is unaffected totally. This happens at the point of node of axial electric field. Those electrons entering the helix, axial field is positive antinode. Now when the RF field is positive, then the accelerating field is simply the electron. When the RF is positive, electrons are accelerated more. They attain more energy. The RF field is going to attain more. The electrons are going to attain more energy, and more energy is simply added to the RF field. Similarly, for the negative, if RF is negative, it is going to be a retarded field for the electron beam, and the amplitude of the electron beam of the RF is simply going to decrease. So thereby the electron velocity is going to get modulated. So it, thereby what happens is the amplitude of the signal is normally going to get changed. So as the electrons travel further and further along the helix, bunching of electrons occur at the end, which shifts the phase of pi by 2. So at the end, we normally going to get a shifted phase, that is shifted by pi by 90 degrees. Magnet produces axial magnetic field, prevents spreading the electron beam as it travels down the field. Now this magnetic field is normally going to stop the electrons electrons to move into the magnetic field. The electron should not touch the magnetic field here. If the electron touches the magnetic field, the magnet is going to lose its magnetic property. It should not touch. So therefore, compulsorily here, while the electron beam is moving in this particular tube, the magnetic field should present before the RF is applied. That is what very important for us. So that means before we start up the device, magnetic field has to be applied. Then the device has to be started. So that care has to be taken here. So this is what the traveling wave tube, which comes under the basically a slow wave structure. Okay. Now, what are the basic characteristics of it? Let us look into this. The frequency ranges, it operates at a frequency range of 3 gigahertz and above. The bandwidth is going to be 0.8 gigahertz, around 0.8 gigahertz bandwidth. So for a gigahertz range frequencies, efficiency is 20 to 40%. It is more than the reflex klystron and less than the magnetron. Reflex klystron maximum efficiency is 22.7%, whereas the maximum efficiency of TWT is 40%. So it is almost double than the reflex klystron maximum amplitude. And power output, it can give more power output at a range of 10 kilowatts of power. And power gain is also going to be very good, up to 60 dB it can give. Noise figure is going to be somewhat acceptable, somewhat more value we are having here, 4 to 6 dB for low power ranges, and for high power ranges 25 dB even it is giving. Okay, so this is what noise figure is not so good in the case of the TWT tube. Noise is also going to get amplified along with the signal if noise figure is really high. Now, there are so many types of slow wave structures, but we have only helix in the syllabus. Now, what do you mean by pitch here? So this pitch, this is nothing but this total circumference. This is nothing but pi d. If the distance between the top and bottom of the helix is going to be the diameter with d, the diameter is going to be d, then pi d is normally going to be the circumference. Pi d is going to be the circumference of this particular helix. Now, when you take up the helix, what are you going to have now? Let us look into this now. So, from the peak value of the helix and next to bottom value of the helix, if you erect a line, if you draw a line, then it's going to get some distance here, and by forming some angle theta. This, when you draw it here, the circumference is nothing but equal to pi d, and this is going to be p. So as it is this triangle, I'm drawing it here, and the angle is going to be, pitch angle is nothing but theta. Okay. Now here, what we can write it here is going to be like this. We have to get a relationship between the velocity ratio of the phase velocity of the electron beam along the pitch to the phase velocity of the RF field. So phase velocity of the electron beam to the phase velocity of the RF field ratio we are going to find out. So the phase velocity of the electron beam is going to be called as Vp, and phase velocity of the RF field along the coil is going to be called as C. So the phase velocity of the RF field is going to increase if you are going to use it as an amplifier, definitely. And the phase velocity electron beam is the phase velocity before the modulation is called Vp, is equal to sine theta for us. So therefore this sine theta, now how can I write this sine theta? Sine theta is nothing but equal to opposite by hypotenuse. What is hypotenuse? Under root of p square plus t pi whole square. So therefore this Vp by C is equal to sine theta we can write. So this sine theta I can write as this. Now in this thing, this pi d is going to be very greater than P, or P is very less than pi d. The pitch is going to be very much less than the circumference, obviously. So therefore, if you reduce that particular value, we normally going to get a pi d square. This pi d square, this square and root will get cancelled. So I get Cp by pi d. So this is nothing but the phase velocity. So general formula for phase velocity is nothing but equal to omega by beta for us. So we can write this Vp is equal to omega by beta, which is equal to Cp by pi d. So this is what the relationship between the phase velocity of the electron beam with respect to the phase constant of the wave, which is getting propagated in the medium, propagating in the TWT tube. Okay. And lastly, let us try to, these two are going to come under the linear beam tubes, klystron amplifier as well as traveling wave tube amplifier. So as these are linear beam tubes, let us try to have a difference between these two. Klystron amplifier is going to use the cavities for input and output circuits, whereas in TWT, no cavities are used. It uses only non-resonant wave structures. So it is narrow band device used to due to use of resonant cavities. It is a narrow band device due to the use of resonant cavities. It is a broadband device. So TWT is basically a broadband device, not a narrow band device. The RF wave does not propagate with the same speed as the electrons in the beam. The RF wave does not propagate with the same speed. Now in the klystron amplifier, the RF wave does not propagate with the same speed as the electrons in the beam. The electrons coming from the cathode and the electrons which are due to the RF wave does not propagate with the same velocity in the case of the klystron amplifier. So whereas in the case of this TWT tube, the RF speed should be equal to the electron beam speed. So this is what very important point. And here in the case of klystron amplifier, velocity modulation is going to take place. Here also small amount of velocity modulation caused by the weak electric fields associated with the traveling wave is going to take place. Here also velocity modulation later translates to the current modulation, which then induces an RF current in the circuit, so causing the amplification. So that means here in the case of klystron amplifier, velocity modulation is converted into the current modulation. After current modulation, we are going to picking that particular current through the output coupling device to get the output RF signal. Now what about here now? Here small amount of velocity modulation caused by the weak electric fields associated with the traveling wave. So here also velocity modulation is going to take place to get the amplification. Next difference is going to be what now? The interaction of electron beam and the RF field in the klystron occurs at the at the gaps of a few resonant cavities. The interaction of electron beam and the RF field in the klystron oscillator occurs only at the gaps. That means where the RF field and the electron beam will meet each other only in the gaps of the cavities. Whereas here the interaction is continuous over the entire length of the circuit. The interaction between the input RF signal and the electron beam is continuous throughout the wave structure in the case of the TWT type of the tubes. Therefore, the power output of this circuit is going to be more. The power output of TWT is more than the power output of the klystron tubes, klystron amplifiers. In the klystron, we have two cavities which operates independently, no coupling effect between the cavities. So in the klystron amplifier, we're going to have two cavities, buncher cavity and a catcher cavity. Now these two are separated apart. There is no coupling between these two cavities. Whereas we're going to have some coupling effect over the entire length because these two are in between these two, we're going to have the magnetic energies. Therefore, these two are definitely coupled. So these klystron amplifiers are not going to use any slow wave structures, whereas TWT is normally going to use the helix as the slow wave structure. Low power output. Now the klystron amplifier is going to give a low power output, short life, narrow band device. Whereas here in the case of the TWT, it is going to be high power output. It produces high power output. It gives long life and is normally used for the wideband applications. So TWT device is used for wideband applications. Whenever we wanted to amplify the microwave signals at wideband, then we normally go with a TWT type of the tubes in the industry. Okay, so these are all some of the concepts related to the TWT working. Okay, principle of working, TWT, and the basic phase velocity equation. Okay, thank you very much for the today's session.